Hello friends, my name is Tito and welcome to this special Halloween episode of Retro Renew. This is part one of a two-part series where we try to get into the Halloween spirit, and what better way to do that than to play some scary video games. Today in part one, I'm going to go over my favorite titles that I like to play during the Halloween season. These games are bound to send chills up your spine and are even good for the occasional jump scare. Now, this is by no means a definitive list of the best horror games around. These just happen to be my personal favorite titles that I actually have in my collection. Now, there are just too many individual games to go over, and this video would take forever to get through if I were to talk about each one, so I decided that I would briefly share my top 5 favorite horror franchises. I will go over all 5 in no particular order and discuss some of my favorites within each series. This selection spans many console generations and goes way back to the late 80s all the way up through 2020. Alright, grab some candy and your favorite spooky beverage, cause we're gonna start with number 1. Night Trap. Night Trap has all the elements of a campy 80s horror flick, from its cheesy dialogue to its over-the-top antics. While this isn't the scariest game in the bunch, it created quite the stir, igniting a hearing at the United States Senate regarding video game violence. Along with the far more brutal game Mortal Kombat, Night Trap was deemed inappropriate for children and led to the creation of our current video game rating system, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or ESRB. Looking at the game now, it pales in comparison to the violence presently found in a lot of video games, and it's hard to believe this game was so controversial. In terms of gameplay, you're part of an elite special forces team determined to take down the monsters that inhabit a large winery estate. You have full control over the home security camera system, as well as all the traps scattered throughout the house. Your mission is to capture as many enemies, or augurs as they're called, and save everyone from these vampire-like beings. In my opinion, this game is pretty tough, but I always get a laugh at how over the top and campy the game is. If you want to learn more about the history that surrounds the development and reception of this game, I highly recommend checking out My Life in Gaming's excellent documentary about the game. I'll leave a link to it in the description below.
Yeah, great!
Coming in at number 2 is Splatterhouse. This side-scrolling beat-em-up was originally released for the arcades in the late 80s, and has been ported to many home consoles. This game took many cues from popular slasher horror movies of the time, such as Friday the 13th. Do you see a resemblance here? Anyway, gameplay is pretty standard for a side-scrolling beat-em-up, with features such as various weapons that you can pick up on your journey. The story follows the main protagonist Rick, who has to rescue his damsel in distress, Jennifer. Standard fare for these types of games. If you've been watching my channel, then you'll know I own the Japanese PC Engine port of this game. I also happen to have the North American TurboGrafx 16 version, as well as Splatterhouse 3 for the Sega Genesis. All in all, this is a great game that is sure to be a favorite of any slasher horror movie fan. Now, the next 3 series of games that are on my list are all in the survivor horror genre. This is one of my favorite genre of games to play no matter the time of year. So that brings us to number 3, The Last of Us. The Last of Us takes place in a post-pandemic world which has been overridden by the infected, as well as various questionable groups of uninfected humans who seem to be just as dangerous as the monsters. The Last of Us was a game changer, no pun intended. It showed that a game could be every bit as gripping and captivating as a big-budget Hollywood film. The writing, voice acting, story, and overall presentation was a tour de force when it came out in 2013 for the PlayStation 3. A sequel was released in June of this year, and I'm curious if there will be a third entry in the series. I really hope there is. Naughty Dog has proven that they are masters of storytelling in this fantastic epic, which is certainly one of my favorite games of all time.
You make every shot count.
Next, at number 4 is Resident Evil. I was first introduced to the series with the release of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. At the time, I didn't own a PlayStation, but one of my good friends did, and he was very excited to show me this game. Needless to say, I was impressed. The pre-rendered backgrounds, polygonal characters, and the action-oriented gameplay with the occasional puzzle made me wish I had a PlayStation of my own. It wouldn't be until the year 2000 that I would revisit the franchise. When Resident Evil Code Veronica was released for the Sega Dreamcast, I jumped at the opportunity to get back into the series. I was completely blown away by the graphics, gameplay, and story. For me, Resident Evil Code Veronica is one of the best and probably in my top 3 for the series. Over time, I would slowly complete each installment in the franchise. Some of my notable favorites are the remake of the original Resident Evil for the Nintendo GameCube, as well as the recently released remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 for current generation consoles. It is my hope that they will remake Resident Evil Code Veronica sometime in the future.
I don't want you following me, lady.
And lastly, coming in at number 5 is Silent Hill. There are many entries in this franchise, however, the first 4 are amongst my favorite, each of which were developed by Team Silent themselves. All of the main series entries after Silent Hill 4 were made by different developers, and in my opinion do not have the same feel as the first 4. They're not bad games, but their style and execution just don't do it for me. I was introduced to the Silent Hill franchise again by the same friend who got me into Resident Evil. Silent Hill 2 would be the first game I completed, and after beating it, I was hooked. I later purchased a used copy of the first Silent Hill game for the original PlayStation, and again was very impressed. The Silent Hill games employ a different type of horror. It doesn't rely on the in-your-face zombies or an imminent threat of some monster. No, Silent Hill focuses on the fear of the unknown, and utilizes more psychological elements, which in my opinion are all the more horrifying. Having played all the main series titles, I unfortunately did not have the opportunity to play PT, which was a demo for the now cancelled Silent Hills. Based on what I've seen and the fact that both Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro were both at the helm of this project, and while also starring Norman Reedus as the protagonist, I was very disappointed when Konami decided to cancel the game. I'm hoping that we'll get a new installment in the franchise as we enter a new console generation, since we haven't had a main series entry since 2012.
I'm looking for Silent Hill. Is this the right way?
So there you have it. These are my top picks of games I like to play during the Halloween season. But again, these are just my picks and the games that I have on hand. I'm more curious to learn about the games that you'll be playing. Let me know which titles have given you the biggest scares and made you sleep with the lights on for weeks at a time. Go ahead and share them in the comments section below. And also, be sure to stay tuned for next week's part 2 of this special Halloween series, where I'll be attempting to bring some poor old console back from the dead. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Macho Nacho Productions. I release content every Thursday, so be sure to turn on notifications. And as always, we'll see you next time.